2 Florida school districts have just done something that's kind of amazing. Because in Florida, where Republicans run the state, they have passed a law that says public school districts can have volunteer chaplains in the building that kind of function in place of social workers and counselors. And Florida passed a law earlier this year that says, yeah, you can have Christian chaplains in schools. And the law says, here are some caveats to that. Parents have to be informed about the religious affiliations of these chaplains. So, like, if a Satanic Temple chaplain makes the list, parents can know who that person is. All the parents have to give permission before the kids see them. Okay. And all the potential chaplains have to pass a background check, which is fine. It's like the bare minimum, but okay. But there's nothing about proselytizing. If a Christian chaplain gets in the building and a parent says, hey, I think my son is gay and I want you to meet with him and I give you permission to talk to him, what is stopping that? Stopping that chaplain from trying conversion therapy or telling the kid that there's something wrong with him? Nothing, in theory. That's the problem with this bill. But this is what they passed in Florida. And we knew what this would look like in practice. Like, there are going to be, you can imagine, there are no rules to becoming a chaplain. There don't have to be, because the law doesn't say you have to have X amount of years in school or anything like that. So a church that said, hey, if you're a man in my church, I printed out these certificates for you that say you're a chaplain, and I sign them, and come pick yours up and then go to your local school district, tell them you're a chaplain so we can get our church in the building. There's nothing stopping them from doing that, basically. Like, anyone can be a chaplain as long as their priest wants them to do it. And you know there are some priests who will absolutely do that, right? So there's nothing stopping them from using public schools as target practice for proselytizing and for conversions. All they need is a parent's permission, and they could spend this school time trying to get the kids to convert. And you can imagine the problem for LGBTQ students and other minority students, okay? So, again, the law says school districts can have public school chaplains, but it's up to the individual school districts to figure it out. Now, I talked about this back, I think, in August, maybe a couple months ago, because Ron DeSantis signed the chaplain bill at a high school in Osceola County. And the superintendent said at the time, it's an honor that you've chosen our community for today's signing ceremony. But I mentioned this a few weeks ago because that county said, oh, we just heard from a Satanist who wants to be involved in this. Maybe we should not allow chaplains in our buildings at all. And they didn't vote on it, but the Satanic Temple did speak at their meetings. And they were like, maybe we don't want to do this here. Now, they had every right to do it. But anyway, they kept delaying that vote in Osceola County. They said, okay, Satanists spoke. Let's not vote on this. Let's have a committee look into this. So later on, Florida, the Republicans in Florida, released a model policy that any district could use if they wanted to. Like, this policy said a chaplain has to be someone who's authorized by the leadership of a religion under the religion's governing principles to conduct religious exercises, which is a very formal way of saying if your religion isn't that organized or you're too small a group, you can't be a chaplain. That's what that was all about. The model policy also said, hey, school districts, you could say that chaplains have to have a grad school degree in counseling or theology, as if those are the same thing. And they have to have 2 years of experience, which are things that Christians might have. But I promise you, humanist chaplains, satanic chaplains, probably don't have the infrastructure to pull that off, right? And that's the thing. If a school district adopted the model policy, they're kind of setting themselves up for a lawsuit. Americans United for Separation of Church and State looked at that model policy, and they put out a press release saying, you guys, if you adopt this, it's unconstitutional. It's going to exclude so many Christian denominations, much less non-Christian ones. You can't take this. So every school district now has to decide, do we want chaplains? If we do, what are the rules we're going to use? Because if we use whatever Ron DeSantis is giving us, we could be sued over it, and he's not going to step in to help us. if that happens. Okay. One of the interesting things I think you might want to see is this right here in Osceola County. They actually had a proposal on the table for what their chaplain program would look like. And look at this thing that I highlighted here. The parent shall sign a waiver that releases the school district from liability for any and all actions of the school chaplain. This county says, okay, we want to bring chaplains in the school, but if we do and they do something you don't like, you can't blame us for it. If you have to include a liability waiver, why doesn't it cross your mind that maybe this is just a bad idea to begin with, right? So just ominous, that's a bad idea. So anyway, this week, and the reason I wanted to share this with you tonight, this week, after months of meetings and debates, the Osceola County School Board, and a different one I'll show you in a second, they decided they were going to take a vote on school chaplains and this new policy. Do we want to adopt the chaplain policy using these new rules that we created? Or do we want to say no to the entire thing? And one of the dudes who was speaking out in favor of getting chaplains was actually one of the former school board members who really advocated for this when he was on the board. He said, this program is necessary. God is not a lie. You will harm our students by denying this. Here's something good for our population and you deny it. Whereas another school board member who is actually sitting on the board was like, you guys, this opens our district up to potential financial risk, and I don't want to take that risk. Students still have the ability to express their faith. It's still protected, but I am worried there will be a challenge to this law as it's written. And during the public comments that took place this week, I wanted to share with you just a short clip from one of them. This is from Jocelyn Williamson, and she is the co-founder of the Central Florida Free Thought Community. And she spoke up before they were voting on this, and she urged them, do not vote for this policy, okay? It's just going to end badly. She spoke for a few minutes. I'm only going to show you 1 minute, but here you go.
Suppose a student questioning their sexuality or a family situation seeks help. Can we trust that the counsel, shaped by the chaplain's particular beliefs, will be unbiased, supportive, and trauma-informed? Your policy allows religious convictions to invalidate a student's lived reality regardless of intent. We must acknowledge the messy process of deciding which faiths count, which clergy qualify, who makes that call. Do we want district employees becoming arbiters of religious legitimacy? Let's remember, students and parents have always found clergy outside school hours and off campus. Students can form religious clubs. They can carry religious scripture. They can pray with their peers, even proselytize student to student, freedoms that are well protected. Why create new entanglements? Our children deserve certified, competent care and an environment free from doctrinal disputes. This policy will surely bring that.
Love it. She's so eloquent in how she said that. And guess what happened? When they finally voted on this, they actually had a very big rules package, including that section with the chaplains. They unanimously decided to adopt the rules, but without the chaplaincy part. So the chaplains are out the window. They are not doing that in Osceola County. And that's a huge victory after months of debate and one Satanist speaking, or maybe more, but speaking at their meetings. I spoke with David Williamson, who is the Central Florida Free Thought Community's other co-founder, and he told me that victory came after 6 meetings and 4 votes. And there was so much pressure on them to adopt the chaplains, but they were rightly worried. The school board was rightly worried about the legal consequences and maybe also the actual fears of what some of these chaplains might do if they were allowed in the buildings. So that's part one. They unanimously rejected the chaplains in Osceola County after all that. Huge. But that's not the only one. There's also a different county, the Marion County School Board, and they were also discussing chaplains. And David Williamson, the guy I just mentioned, spoke at their meeting on Tuesday night because they were going to vote on this too. Now, this is, I think, a smaller school district, but it definitely didn't have the public attendance that you just saw behind Jocelyn. But David spoke at that meeting. Let me share with you what he said to the Marion County School Board.
A chaplain policy seems like a brilliant idea, but the devil is literally in the details. You can either have an unconstitutional chaplain policy that discriminates based on religious viewpoint, or you can have a constitutional policy that exposes you to serious legal liability. And not just from constitutional violations, but from the risk involved when you bring untrained, non-professionals onto campus to deal with some pretty heavy stuff in the lives of students.
Awesome thing to say. And he said so many things in like 3 minutes. It was great. And guess what? In Marion County, after all two of the people spoke, there wasn't that many, but after the people spoke, they voted on the chaplain policy in that county. It was 2-2 when it came to the chaplain policy, which means it did not pass. So they failed in Marion County as well. Interestingly enough, there is a fifth board member. He is a reverend, but for whatever reason, he was not present at the meeting. So as a 2-2 vote, they said no to chaplains. And again, huge victory for church-state separation and Satanists and secularists and anyone else who gives a damn about children. So students in these districts will not have to defend themselves from predatory Christians who treat them as targets. Instead, if they need help, they can rely on trained professionals who take their job seriously. And if the school boards want to help those students, or if the Republicans who run Florida want to help those students, they can always give districts more money to hire more counselors and social workers and create incentives for more people to find careers in those professions. They're not doing that right now. But when I spoke to David Williamson this week, he told me he believes this rejection of chaplains is spreading. He told me 8 Florida counties, including the 2 I just showed you, have already rejected the idea of chaplains. Some of them are rural, red, religious counties. And he said these school boards are discovering what we and their attorneys know. You can't have a chaplain program without both discriminating against applicants and violating students' rights under the Establishment Clause. And if any county decides to say yes to chaplains, you can bet there's going to be a lawsuit coming their way. So yay, happy ending. I think I'm done. I'll take any last questions here. Thanks for sticking around for that. School nurse was good enough when I was a kid. How about more nurses? Yeah, man. There are some awesome trained professionals at public schools who don't get the respect they deserve. Not just nurses, counselors, social workers, everybody. Give them the respect. They're so good at what they do. This is literally going to kill someone. How is this any different than practicing without a license? I have to have a license to practice, but now I just have to be some priest to do the same job. Yeah, that is the concern. We don't know what these priests, these chaplains, are telling kids about very serious issues that the kids might have that their parents want them to see someone about. And instead of seeing someone who's gone through training and understands the nuance, they're going to someone who's guided by whatever their religion teaches them. That could end very badly depending on the issue. Like there are some things I have no desire to talk to a kid about because it's above my pay grade, but I want to be able to send them to a counselor or social worker. And I don't want to send them to a chaplain who doesn't have that kind of experience. So yeah, it could end very badly. And I think a lot of these school districts realize that, and getting chaplains on board is not going to fix whatever problems exist in their district.